Volunteers and interns. So we are in chapter 4 about employees, but because the Abba Father Maternity House doesn't have employees, I invite you to look at that for yourself, and we're going to skip down to volunteers and interns. Volunteers and interns are a tremendous resource to the nonprofit sector. Because organizations frequently benefit from volunteer assistance in pursuing their missions, it is important that organizations understand the legal and practical differences between paid and unpaid personnel. The use of volunteers and interns entails a certain level of risk, both to and from an organization, including labor law violations for misclassification of the worker as a volunteer or intern, Other issues may arise, such as the liability of the volunteer or organization to third parties for acts committed by the volunteer, misappropriation by the volunteer of the organization's tangible or intangible property, and unintended tax consequences for any benefits provided to the volunteer that are not exempt, i.e., living allowances or other in-kind benefits that do not qualify as de minimis fringe benefits excluded from tax. If the volunteer is not a true volunteer and receives some form of compensation, the labor and other laws pertaining to employees discussed in this chapter must be followed, such as minimum wage and overtime rates and anti-discrimination standards. Also, if the organization has an internship program, the program must meet the criteria set forth by federal and state law. Failure to meet these criteria could result in the application of labor and other laws pertaining to employees to the organization's interns. The Department of Labor's Fact Sheet 71, Internship Programs under the Fair Labor Standard Act, outlines a list of criteria. And this is Meow-Meow's. Risk management tips. There are some best practices for charitable organizations that use volunteers and interns. Document employee, intern, and volunteer policies in separate manuals. Provide intern and volunteer job descriptions in writing. Establish policies about hours of service. Proceed with care when paying volunteers and interns. Establish a grievance policy for volunteers and interns to address any issues that may arise. And verify whether volunteers and interns are covered by the organization's worker compensation or other insurance. There are also several Q&A questions. I encourage you to look at them on page 28.